Silence is loud. It speaks when you refuse to speak. It moves when you refuse to chase. Most people think silence is weakness. They think walking away means you lost. But what if silence is strategy? What if silence is strength? What if silence is how you win a battle no one else even knows you're fighting? Tonight, we are talking about no contesti vs non OTTT, not who texts first, but who grows first. Silence is not empty. Silence is heavy. It presses on your chest in the quiet hours of the night when the phone is within reach and the memories start speaking louder than reason. That moment. When you want to react, explain, defend, or reach out is where self-control is truly measured. Anyone can talk when emotions are high. Anyone can send a message when the heart feels restless. But restraint is rare. It requires you to sit with discomfort without trying to escape it. Silence forces you to confront your impulses instead of feeding them. And most people fail right there. They mistake the urge to speak for the need to speak, and in doing so, they give away their power. Self-control is not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. Silence gives you no immediate relief, no instant validation, no reassurance that you're still seen or wanted. That's why it's difficult. Your mind looks for excuses, just one message, just one explanation, just one question. But every time you resist that urge, you strengthen a muscle most people never develop. You begin to understand that feelings do not require action. You learn that discomfort is not danger. Silence trains you to pause, to breathe, and to respond instead of react. And in a world addicted to reaction, the person who can pause automatically stands above the rest. Silence also exposes how dependent we are on external responses. We are conditioned to believe that if someone doesn't reply, we are losing. That if we don't speak, we are forgotten. But silence flips that illusion on its head. It teaches you that your worth does not decrease because someone else is quiet. It shows you how often you've used words to seek reassurance instead of building confidence. When you stay silent, you stop outsourcing your stability to someone else's attention. You stop needing proof in the form of messages and replies. Self-control grows when you realize that peace does not come from being acknowledged, but from being grounded. There is a deeper discipline inside silence that most people never recognize. It's the discipline of not explaining yourself to people who have already decided how they see you. Silence prevents you from over-justifying, over-apologizing, and over-extending yourself emotionally. When you speak from a place of desperation, your words lose weight. Silence protects your dignity when emotions try to pull you into performance mode. It keeps you from chasing clarity from people who thrive in confusion. Self-control means understanding that not every thought deserves a voice and not every feeling deserves an audience. Silence also forces honesty. When there is no conversation to hide behind, you are left alone with your motives. You begin to ask yourself why you want to reach out. Is it love or is it fear? Is it connection or is it ego? Silence removes distractions and exposes intention. This is uncomfortable because it strips away excuses. You can no longer say you reacted because they spoke first. You can no longer blame circumstances. You are faced with a simple truth. Either you control your actions or your emotions control you. And the moment you choose restraint, you reclaim authority over yourself. Over time, silence changes how you see power. You realize that the strongest person in the room is not the loudest one, but the most composed. The one who can feel deeply without being ruled by emotion. The one who can walk away without slamming doors. Self-control built through silence doesn't just help in relationships. It shapes leadership, confidence, and identity. You stop proving and start becoming. Silence becomes your training ground, teaching you patience, discipline, and inner authority. And once you master that, no external situation can ever truly control you again. No contact doesn't just create distance between two people. It removes the mask. When communication stops, there's nothing left to hide behind. No carefully chosen words, no emotional bargaining, no performance designed to impress, guilt, or persuade. What remains is character. And character is not revealed when things are comfortable. It's revealed when there is nothing to lean on. No contact strips life down to its essentials and asks a hard question. Who are you when no one is watching, validating, or responding? When the noise is gone, patterns become clear. Some people fall apart in silence because their identity was built on being needed. Others become angry because they relied on control rather than connection. And then there are those who grow quieter, steadier, and more intentional. No contact exposes whether someone seeks growth or distraction. It shows whether a person knows how to stand alone or only knows how to exist in reaction to someone else. Character is revealed in how you handle absence, whether you chase it, fear it, or use it. Silence reveals emotional maturity in a way words never can. Anyone can say they're strong, healed, or independent. But when there's no contact, claims don't matter. Behavior does. Do you respect boundaries, or do you try to break them? When emotions rise, do you reflect, or do you immediately look for substitutes to avoid discomfort? No contact forces you to deal with yourself honestly. There's no one to blame, no conversation to twist, no reassurance to borrow. Your habits, values, and emotional discipline are fully exposed. No contact also reveals how someone handles responsibility. In the absence of communication, excuses lose their power. You can no longer blame misunderstandings, timing, or lack of explanation. You are left with your actions and your reactions. Some people use this time to reflect on their role, their mistakes, and their patterns. Others rewrite history to protect their ego. Character is not shown by claiming innocence. It's shown by the willingness to take accountability without needing forgiveness or validation in return. There is also a quiet honesty that no contact brings out. When you stop speaking, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop adjusting yourself to be more acceptable, more agreeable, more convenient. You begin to see whether you were compromising values just to keep a connection alive. No contact shows you if you were shrinking to be chosen or standing firm in who you are. Character is revealed when you choose self-respect over familiarity, even when loneliness tries to convince you otherwise. For many, no contact is uncomfortable because it removes the ability to influence perception. You can't explain yourself. You can't correct assumptions. You can't control how you're remembered. And that's exactly where character lives. Do you trust who you are enough to let your absence speak? Or do you feel the need to manage the narrative at all costs? Strong character doesn't chase understanding, it remains consistent. It understands that the right people recognize integrity without explanation. Over time, no contact separates emotional strength from emotional dependence. Those with strong character use the silence to build, reflect, and realign. They don't rush to replace what was lost. They examine why it mattered so much in the first place. They don't demonize the past or romanticize it. They learn from it. No contact becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see. But the ones who face it honestly are the ones who change. And character, once strengthened in silence, doesn't fade when the noise returns. The hardest fights are not loud. They don't happen in arguments or conversations or dramatic endings. They happen in silence, behind closed doors, in the space between impulse and restraint. When there is no contact, the external conflict disappears, but the internal one intensifies. That's where the real battle begins. You are no longer reacting to another person's words or actions. You are confronting your own habits, fears, and emotional dependencies. Without someone else to focus on, the spotlight turns inward, and not everyone is prepared for what they see. Most people think they miss a person, but what they really miss is the version of themselves they felt around that person. No contact forces you to separate the individual from the emotional attachment. You begin to realize how much of your identity was wrapped up in being chosen, understood, or needed. The internal battle is learning to sit with that loss without trying to replace it immediately. It's resisting the urge to distract yourself just to avoid feeling empty. Growth doesn't come from escape. It comes from staying present long enough to understand why the emptiness exists in the first place. This internal conflict is fueled by memory. Your mind replays moments, conversations, and possibilities, trying to reopen doors that have already closed. You start negotiating with the past, imagining different outcomes, different words, different versions of yourself. No contact makes this unavoidable because there is no new information to override the old. The battle becomes learning to stop reliving what was and start accepting what is. That acceptance is not passive. It's an active decision to stop feeding thoughts that weaken you. Every time you redirect your focus, you reclaim a piece of your mental strength. There is also a battle between comfort and growth. Comfort whispers that going back would be easier, that familiarity is safer than uncertainty. Growth demands the opposite. It asks you to tolerate discomfort, to stay disciplined when emotions beg for relief. No contact puts you in that crossroads daily. One path leads back to what's known but limiting. The other leads forward into something unfamiliar but stronger. The internal battle is choosing long-term self-respect over short-term emotional relief again and again, even when no one is applauding the effort. Fear plays a major role in this struggle. Fear of being forgotten, fear of being replaced, fear of discovering that the other person is doing just fine without you. No contact removes your ability to monitor, check, or compare, which intensifies these fears. But that's also where power is built. When you stop checking, you stop feeding anxiety. When you stop imagining their life, you start rebuilding your own. The internal battle is not about controlling fear, but about not letting fear dictate your actions. As time passes, the fight begins to shift. The urges weaken, the emotional waves lose intensity, and clarity starts to replace chaos. You begin to recognize patterns, not just in the relationship, but in yourself. You see how you attach, how you react under stress, how you handle uncertainty. This awareness is hard-earned, and it only comes from facing the internal battle instead of avoiding it. No contact becomes less about them and more about you, less about loss and more about transformation. In the end, the real victory of no contact is not distance from another person, it's alignment with yourself. When you win the internal battle, external situations lose their grip on you. You no longer need closure to move forward or answers to feel complete. You become emotionally self-sufficient, grounded, and intentional. And that strength, built quietly and privately, is something no one can take away from you. Silence has weight, but growth gives it presence. When there is no contact and no announcement, no explanations and no updates, the only thing that speaks is change. Most people believe that if they disappear quietly, they will be forgotten. But real growth does the opposite. It amplifies absence. When you stop talking and start building, the silence around you becomes noticeable, not because you demand attention, but because progress leaves evidence. Growth doesn't chase recognition. It creates contrast. In silence, growth becomes intentional. There is no audience to impress, no one to prove anything to, no reaction to measure your worth by. Every improvement you make belongs entirely to you. This is where discipline is forged. You work on your body without posting it. You sharpen your mind without announcing it. You refine your purpose without seeking approval. And because there is no validation attached, the growth is real. It's not performative. It's not reactive. It's rooted. Silence removes the temptation to grow for appearance and replaces it with growth for identity. As growth continues, something shifts internally. Confidence stops being loud. You no longer feel the need to be seen because you know who you are. Silence becomes comfortable because you are no longer trying to fill it with noise. This is where silence becomes deafening, not because you are absent, but because the person you were is gone. When people eventually notice, they don't hear words, they feel the difference. Growth changes your posture, your energy, your standards. It shows up in what you tolerate and what you walk away from. Growth in silence also protects momentum. When you announce plans too early, you invite opinions, doubts, and comparisons. Silence shields you from that. It gives you space to fail privately, adjust quietly, and continue without interference. Every step forward builds self-trust. You stop needing encouragement because you've proven to yourself that you can move forward alone. That self-trust becomes unshakable. And when growth is sustained without applause, it becomes permanent. There is also a psychological power in growing without contact. While others may be stuck waiting, watching, or wondering, you are occupied with becoming. Your attention is no longer split between past and future. It is focused on progress. Growth gives direction to silence. Instead of replaying memories, you are creating new routines. Instead of waiting for a message, you are setting goals. The mind cannot dwell where it is engaged. Growth fills the space that longing once occupied. Over time, the silence begins to speak for you. Not through words, but through results. People sense distance not as absence, but as evolution. You are no longer reachable in the same way because you are no longer the same person. Growth changes your priorities, your reactions, and your emotional availability. Silence becomes a boundary and growth becomes the message. Without saying a word, you communicate strength, direction, and self-respect. Detachment is often misunderstood. People confuse it with coldness, indifference, or emotional shutdown. In reality, detachment is clarity. It is the ability to care without clinging, to value without depending, and to move forward without resentment. When no contact is practiced with intention, detachment begins to form naturally. You stop tying your emotional state to someone else's actions. You stop measuring your days by whether you are remembered or missed. That shift is subtle, but it is where real power begins. At first, detachment feels uncomfortable because attachment has been mistaken for love for so long. The mind resists letting go of outcomes. It wants reassurance, control, and certainty. Detachment removes all three. You no longer seek guarantees or explanations. You accept that not everything is meant to be understood in the moment. This acceptance doesn't weaken you. It stabilizes you. When you are no longer trying to control what happens, you regain control over how you respond. That emotional independence is rare, and it changes how you move through every situation. Detachment also breaks the cycle of emotional bargaining. You stop replaying scenarios in your head, wondering what you could say or do to change the outcome. You stop adjusting your worth to fit someone else's capacity. No contact creates space, and detachment teaches you how to stand in that space without anxiety. You realize that chasing outcomes keeps you trapped, but releasing them sets you free. Power is not in holding on tighter, it's in knowing you'll be fine if you let go. As detachment grows, fear loses its grip. Fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of being replaced, all of it weakens when you are no longer emotionally invested in results you cannot control. You begin to understand that what is meant to stay will stay without force. What requires chasing was never stable to begin with. Detachment shifts your focus from preserving connections at all costs to preserving your integrity. You choose peace over persuasion, stability over uncertainty. There is also strength in emotional neutrality. Detachment doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means feelings no longer dictate behavior. You can acknowledge pain without acting from it. You can remember without returning. You can care without compromising your boundaries. This level of emotional discipline allows you to move through life with composure. Situations that once triggered anxiety now pass through you without disruption. That calm becomes your advantage, especially in moments where others lose control. Detachment ultimately redefines freedom. You are no longer mentally tied to someone's presence or absence. Your happiness is not delayed, and your progress is not paused. No contact becomes effortless because you are no longer resisting the silence, you are comfortable in it. Detachment allows you to stand alone without feeling lonely, to move forward without bitterness, and to remain open without being vulnerable to manipulation. That is why detachment is power. Nothing external has authority over your inner state. Winning is often misunderstood as being chosen, contacted, or proven right. But real winning happens quietly, long before anyone else notices. In no contact, the true advantage belongs to the one who changes, not the one who waits, watches, or hopes. Change requires effort, honesty, and discomfort, which is why so few people commit to it. It's easier to remain the same and wish for different outcomes than it is to transform and accept whatever comes next. But transformation shifts the entire dynamic, whether or not contact is ever restored. Change begins with self-examination. When the noise stops, patterns become impossible to ignore. You start to see how you showed up, how you reacted under pressure, and what you tolerated out of fear. This is not about blame, it's about awareness. The person who changes does not rewrite the past. They learn from it. They identify weaknesses without self-punishment and recognize strengths without ego. This level of honesty becomes the foundation for growth that is intentional, not reactive. As change takes root, identity evolves. You stop defining yourself by what you lost and start building who you are becoming. Habits shift. Standards rise. The things you once accepted no longer feel acceptable. Change is not loud, but it is deep. It alters how you speak to yourself, how you manage emotions, and how you choose connections. The person who changes does not need to announce progress. It becomes visible in their decisions. They move differently because they think differently. Change also eliminates the need for validation. When you are actively becoming stronger, wiser, and more grounded, external approval loses importance. You are no longer waiting to be seen or acknowledged because you see yourself clearly. This internal validation creates confidence that does not depend on outcomes. Whether someone returns or not becomes irrelevant to your sense of worth. The win is no longer conditional. It is internal and permanent. There is a psychological shift that happens when change is consistent. You stop romanticizing the past and start respecting the lessons it provided. You no longer seek closure from others because your growth has already given you clarity. The person who changes understands that every experience either refines or repeats you. Choosing refinement means choosing discomfort now instead of regret later. That choice alone puts you ahead of most people. Ultimately, the one who changes wins because they are no longer waiting for permission to move forward. They don't need an apology to heal or an explanation to evolve. Change places you in control of your future, regardless of who stays or leaves. While others remain stuck in silence, hoping for a different ending, the one who changes creates a different life. Silence was never the enemy. Comfort was. Attachment was. The fear of standing alone was. No contact is not about absence, it's about alignment. It removes distractions, exposes truth, and demands growth. And growth is never gentle, but it is always honest. When you stop chasing noise, you start hearing yourself. When you stop waiting for permission, you start moving with purpose. And when you stop needing outcomes, you become unstoppable. Let silence do its work. Let discipline replace emotion. Let change speak louder than words. Because in the end, the silent battle is not won by who reaches out first. It is won by the one who rises, remains solid, and never needs to look back.